What characteristics make for a good nib? How can you tell the difference between a nib that is poor overall and a nib that is simply poorly tuned? Well, I think if a pen is poorly tuned, it is pretty much poor overall. Wouldn't you say? I don't know. Maybe it could just look bad. I think it's a super general question, and it's kind of hard to answer without going into like super deep detail about nib construction. I can get a little bit into that. There's a lot of factors that go into nib quality. Of course, you can have quality of materials, the type of alloy, the general design, the tipping material, how well it's welded onto the nib, the tipping specifically. You have the slit that's cut in the nib, the slit position, like is it really sloppy? Is it clean? Is there like all this extra burrs and stuff like that from cutting the slit, or has that been cleaned up? There's lots of different details like that. So the overall general just quality of construction and design of the nib could definitely be a factor. But that stuff usually will contribute to it being poorly tuned. So it's not like you can really have a poor overall nib that's properly tuned necessarily, but there you have it. So you can have a pen that is made well that is improperly tuned. So some things that you can definitely do to tell the difference. Looking at just visual inspection, you're going to need a loupe because you're not really dealing with a lot of material here. Fountain pen nibs are pretty small in the grand scheme of things. You're talking 1/2 inch to 1 inch long, maybe. So a loupe is going to be you need some kind of magnification, a 10x, 15x loupe, to see what's going on, to see the slit, to see all these things. And even some of it then, you can't even really see it. You got to go by feel. And that's where things get really tricky, because if you don't know what it is you're looking for or how to adjust it, it can be really difficult and you can have a hard time with it. So I would say that looking at let's see here. Sorry, Rachel's like messaging me. I'm getting all distracted. Visual inspection using a loupe. Yeah, looking for proper alignment of the tines. That's going to be like number one, especially if it feels scratchy. So you have these tines of the nib. You have your ball, your tipping material of the nib. You have 2 tines with a slit that's cut down the middle, and your tine alignment goes like this, right? If you have a misaligned tine, when you're writing on the page, specifically if it's in one direction, whatever the drop tine is, that's gonna like drag and it's like kind of chatter, and it's gonna feel scratchy. That's where most of the problems come from in terms of the feel. In terms of ink flow, that's where you're dealing with the slit of the tines. And what you want to have, and this is hard to show you here, but basically what you want to have is where your breather hole is. I'll show you on this big, beautiful Mont Blanc nib, right? So your breather hole is going to be right in here. Oh boy, come on, zoomy. So you got your breather hole right there, and you got the slit that goes from the breather hole up to the tip. Not every pen has a breather hole, but this just makes it very visually easy to show. So the slit is cut here and it goes up. There's going to be a slight taper, a very, very slight taper that goes to the tip of that nib. That is going to assist in the capillary action of the ink, that is going to allow it to kind of just constrict and go towards the tip. It's naturally going to want to do that due to capillary action of the water that's in the ink. So as you have that kind of flowing through, it is going to really flow well. You can have pens where it's too tight together and the ink actually can't flow through very easily. That's when it writes really dry. You run into hard starting and stuff like that. You can have it where it's kind of splayed and too wide. You can also have issues with it writing too dry because of that, because if your tines are too wide, spread apart, capillary action will actually work in the reverse direction and it will cause it to flow backwards, and that's not good. So proper alignment of the tines, going both this way and in terms of the width, can make a difference in terms of how your pen feels and flows. So it gets tough because unless you really know what you're looking for, and even then when you do, you got to test it, you got to write with it. It takes a lot of practice, frankly, to be able to get that. But really the best way to tell how properly tuned a nib is to write with it. Is it writing well? Is it flowing well? A properly tuned nib shouldn't require pressure to be able to write. It should just be able to write under its own weight. So that's what you should be able to do, and that's how you know whether it's properly tuned or not. If it's not, and you're able to kind of look and guess at a couple of things and you're still not able to get it to work, that's when you might need to get some help. A nib meister like Mark Backus, Mike Modishaw, John Modishaw, Dan Smith. There's several of them out there who do this kind of thing and can adjust this kind of stuff. You can go to pen shows, you can get this kind of work done from people who do this all the time. Some of them might even have information on their site that will give you some education around it. But that is generally how you tell.